The office was nearly empty, just the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the soft tapping of keys breaking the silence. It was almost midnight when the last email went out, yet neither of us made a move to leave. She stood by the glass wall of her corner office, the city lights reflecting off her black hair like quiet fire. My boss, Elena, was known for her composure. 40 years old, sharp in every sense. Her mind, her tone, even the way she carried herself in heels that clicked with purpose. But that night, her control felt frayed. She leaned against her desk, arms folded, watching me with a mix of curiosity and restraint. "You didn't have to stay this late," she said, her voice calm but softer than usual. I shrugged, pretending to focus on a file I'd already reviewed twice. "Didn't want you working alone." The corner of her mouth curved, half amusement, half disbelief. "You think I can't handle it?" "It's not that," I said, glancing up. "I just thought maybe you want company." A pause, then the faintest sigh. "That's dangerous talk." The air changed, subtle but undeniable. The kind of silence that hums between two people who've both noticed it but don't want to name it. She turned toward the window, the city's glow painting her in gold. Her blouse shimmered faintly under the light, and her reflection looked softer, more human, less like the boss who commanded entire rooms. "You're too young to play with trouble," she murmured. "Maybe," I replied, "but trouble seems to like me." That made her look back, slowly. Her eyes held mine, not with authority, but with something unspoken and searching. A challenge. I walked closer, not enough to cross a line, but close enough that her perfume, something subtle like jasmine and rain, filled the space between us. My voice came out lower than I intended. "You always stay this late?" "Only when I need to think," she said, her gaze drifting somewhere past me. "Deadlines. Decisions. Things I shouldn't feel." The last words slipped out before she caught herself, and her breath hitched. For a moment, she seemed to regret saying them, but didn't take them back. I leaned against the edge of her desk, mirroring her posture. "Maybe you think too much." She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "And maybe you don't think enough." The tension was electric but fragile, like a thread stretched too tight. One wrong word could snap it, and yet neither of us wanted to move away. Her hand brushed past mine when she reached for a file. The briefest touch, accidental, maybe, but it sent a current straight through me. She froze for half a heartbeat, then withdrew, her composure snapping back like armor. "Go home," she said quietly, though her voice trembled just enough to betray her. I gathered my things slowly, my pulse steady but loud in my ears. As I reached the door, she spoke again, softly, almost to herself. "This stays professional." I didn't turn around. Of course. But we both knew neither of us believed it. The next morning felt different. The office was alive again. Phones ringing, heels clicking, papers shuffling, but under the noise was something quieter, charged, and hard to ignore. Every time our paths crossed, there was a moment too long where neither of us spoke. Just a look, just a pause, just enough to remember the silence from last night. By noon, she called me into her office, not with her usual composed authority, but with a hesitance that made me curious. She was dressed in a cream blouse and dark slacks, her black hair swept up, a few loose strands framing her face. The kind of effortless elegance that made people forget how tired she probably was. "Coffee?" she asked, holding up 2 cups. I nodded and took one, sitting across from her desk. "That's dangerous. You never share coffee with employees." She smirked, eyes flicking up. "Consider it a peace offering. For staying too late." "It was worth it," I said without thinking. Her gaze softened, but only for a heartbeat. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why?" "Because it sounds honest." Elena exhaled, looking out the window as if searching for something beyond the skyline. "Because honesty complicates things." The way she said it, it wasn't about the job. It was about us. We sat in that suspended moment, the air filled with the faint aroma of roasted coffee and the hum of the city below. Her fingers traced the edge of her cup, absent-mindedly, and I couldn't help but notice the small, worn silver ring she wore. Not a wedding band, but something older. maybe sentimental. You ever regret working this hard? I asked quietly. She looked back at me, eyes thoughtful. Regret? No. But I wonder what I missed while chasing everything I thought mattered. Like what? Her lips parted, but no words came. She smiled faintly instead, a sad, knowing smile. You're too young to understand that kind of exhaustion. I'm not as young as you think, I said, leaning forward slightly. That made her laugh softly, the first real laugh I'd heard from her. It was warm and genuine, but there was something fragile underneath it. You really don't stop, do you? Not when something, or someone, feels worth the effort. Her eyes lifted to mine again, and for a second the air thinned. The soft rhythm of the world outside faded, replaced by the quiet sound of her breath catching, the rise and fall of her chest, the invisible pull that neither of us dared to acknowledge. A knock on the door broke it. She straightened immediately, her professional tone snapping back like armor. Come in. Her assistant stepped in, handed her a file, and left just as quickly. But the moment was gone, fractured, swept away by reality. I stood up, ready to leave, but she stopped me with a quiet voice. You're good at what you do, she said almost shyly. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I smiled. Even you. Her lips curved again, this time softer. Especially me. As I walked out, I caught my reflection in the glass door. Behind me, she was still watching, coffee untouched, eyes distant, as if wondering how something so small could start feeling so dangerously alive. That Friday, the office emptied out earlier than usual. Laughter faded down the hall, the hum of printers went silent, and for the first time in weeks, the building felt like it belonged to just the two of us again. She was still at her desk when I passed by, jacket off, sleeves rolled to her elbows, the faintest hint of tiredness softening her usual authority. I hesitated at the door. You're still here? I asked, leaning against the frame. Her eyes lifted from the papers. Someone has to make sure this place doesn't fall apart, or someone doesn't know how to stop, I said, stepping closer. Her lips curved slightly, but her tone stayed measured. And which one are you? The second. Always the second. For a while, we worked in silence. I helped her organize reports, print schedules, and sort through client notes. The light above flickered once, then steadied again, soft and golden, brushing against her skin. The city outside the windows glowed like a quiet sea of stars. At one point, our hands brushed as we both reached for the same folder. She froze, just for a second before withdrawing, but not before her fingers lingered, barely touching mine, yet enough to make my pulse stumble. Sorry, she murmured. Don't be, I replied softly. Something in her expression shifted, an unspoken confession that sat between restraint and temptation. Her usual confidence seemed to falter. You really should stop saying things like that. Because they're true? I asked again, the same way I had before. She sighed this time, looking away, but I could see the smallest smile tugging at her lips. You're persistent. I'll give you that. Only when I care, I said. Her hand paused mid-motion, and for a moment, the air was heavy again. The same charged stillness as before, but deeper now. The kind that doesn't ask for words. After a long silence, she leaned back in her chair, studying me like she was trying to read a part of herself reflected in my face. You don't know what you're doing, she said quietly. You think you do, but you don't. Then teach me, I said, almost a whisper. Her breath caught, just barely, but I saw it. The smallest flicker of emotion that cracked through her calm exterior. She stood then, gathering her files with a kind of nervous precision, and walked past me toward the door. You should go home, she said softly. I will. When you do. She stopped but didn't turn. The hallway light caught the edges of her profile, the line of her jaw, the strand of hair that had come loose. You make things complicated, she whispered. Maybe they were complicated before I got here. This time, she did turn, and the look she gave me wasn't her usual composed mask. It was something raw, uncertain, almost fragile. You don't understand what you're asking for. Maybe not, I said, stepping closer. But neither of us is pretending it's nothing. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric, heavy. The kind of silence that said something's already begun. She finally exhaled, shaking her head slightly, and with the faintest smile said, "You'll regret pushing this." I smiled back. "Not half as much as you'll miss it." Her expression faltered, caught between shock and a hidden smile, and before either of us could say another word, the office lights flicked off, leaving only the city glow tracing her silhouette. Neither of us moved. Neither of us left. The rain began just as we stepped outside the office, soft at first, then steadier, like the sky couldn't decide whether to cleanse or complicate. The parking lot shimmered beneath the amber streetlights, reflections stretching like liquid glass across the asphalt. She paused beside her car, keys in hand, hair catching the drizzle. "You should get going," she said, her tone light but her eyes distant. I shrugged. "You live closer to here. Let me drive you." Her head turned sharply, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she masked it again. "That's not necessary." "I didn't say it was," I replied gently. "Just that I want to." For a long moment, she just looked at me. The sound of the rain filled the space between us, steady, insistent. Then she sighed and tossed me her keys. "Fine, but don't talk too much." I smiled. "I'll do my best." The car smelled faintly of her perfume, something clean, floral, and faintly citrus. It was the kind of scent that lingered even when she didn't. She sat beside me, posture composed but fingers restless against her knee. The soft glow from the dashboard painted her face in pale gold and shadow. For the first few miles, neither of us spoke. The wipers kept their rhythm. The world outside blurred into streaks of light and rain. Finally, she broke the silence. "You shouldn't have said that tonight." "Which part?" Her eyes stayed fixed on the road. "That I'll miss it." I glanced at her profile, the curve of her jaw illuminated by passing headlights. Was it wrong? She hesitated. It was unfair. To who? Her voice was quiet now, almost lost under the sound of rain. To both of us. Something in her tone softened the air between us. I slowed the car, letting the tension settle like mist. "You think caring about someone is unfair?" "I think it's dangerous," she said. We stopped at a red light. She turned her head toward me, finally meeting my eyes. The glow from the street lamp outside framed her face, the faint smile lines near her eyes, the drops of rain clinging to her hair. "Then why are you still here?" I asked. Her lips parted, but no answer came. The silence stretched longer this time, heavier. When the light turned green, she looked away. "Turn left up ahead," she murmured. I did. Her neighborhood was quiet, trees arching over the street, driveways glistening with rain. I pulled up in front of her house and turned off the engine. The rain softened, but the quiet between us deepened. She didn't move to open the door. Instead, she sat there, staring out at the porch light flickering faintly. "You have no idea what you're doing," she said, almost to herself. "Maybe not," I replied softly, "but I'm not sorry for it." She turned then, eyes shining not from tears, but something heavier, something that looked like surrender fighting against reason. Her hand reached for the door handle, but stopped halfway. "Don't wait for me to be ready," she whispered. "I won't," I said, my voice low, "but I'll still be here." She exhaled, a shaky, uncertain breath, and then opened the door. For a moment, she lingered, standing in the rain, her hair clinging to her shoulders, eyes hidden beneath the falling water. Then she turned back one last time. "You really are trouble," she said. I smiled faintly. "Only if you let me be." Her lips curved, almost against her will, before she walked toward the door. Each step slow, deliberate, like she was leaving more behind than she meant to. From the car, I watched her pause at her porch, hand trembling slightly on the key. And in that quiet second, I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not even close. The following morning, everything was supposed to return to normal. She walked past my desk without so much as a glance, her hair tied neatly, her stride calm and measured. The air between us was still charged, but now it hummed with the effort of restraint. Every word exchanged felt rehearsed, every silence carefully built to hide what had already slipped between us. Meetings blurred. Conversations with coworkers felt hollow. The only real sound that cut through the monotony was her voice, steady, collected, and frustratingly indifferent. I watched her command the room like she always did, confident, poised, untouchable. And yet, when her eyes met mine across the conference table, they lingered for just a fraction too long. After the meeting, she called me into her office. The door clicked shut behind me, that soft sound of privacy echoing in the small space. She didn't look up at first, just shuffled through a stack of papers like she was searching for something, maybe her composure. "I wanted to talk about last night," she said finally, her tone professional, but her posture betrayed her, shoulders tense, voice lower than usual. "About the drive?" I asked carefully. Her gaze flicked up. "About all of it." I nodded, leaning slightly against the chair across from her desk. "Then let's talk." She sighed. "What happened, whatever that was, can't happen again. It's dangerous. For both of us." "Dangerous," I repeated quietly. "Or honest." Her eyes flashed with something unguarded, but she quickly masked it. "You're younger. You don't understand how these things look." I stepped closer, the sound of my shoes against the carpet suddenly loud. "I understand how they feel." That stopped her. The room fell still, the hum of the AC filling the silence. "Don't do this," she whispered. "Don't make this harder than it already is." "I'm not trying to make it harder," I said softly. "I'm trying to make it real." Her breath caught, a subtle tremor I almost missed. Her fingers brushed against the edge of her desk, knuckles pale from the grip. "You think you're ready for what comes with that?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but I know what it's like to not try, and that's worse." For a moment, the wall she kept so carefully built cracked. She looked at me like she was seeing something she shouldn't want but couldn't turn away from. Her expression softened, eyes glistening with quiet confusion, lips parting as if to say something she couldn't allow herself to. Finally, she turned away, walking toward the window. The sunlight fell across her shoulders, tracing the curve of her neck. "You should go," she said, her voice barely steady. I didn't move. "Say it like you mean it." Her reflection met mine in the glass, two blurred outlines caught between light and shadow. "If I say it like I mean it," she murmured, "you won't listen." I smiled faintly. "You're probably right." She let out a slow breath, shaking her head as if to chase away something she couldn't contain. "You're impossible. Only because you don't stop me," I said. Her lips curved, faint but real this time, before she turned back toward her desk. "Go before someone sees you in here." I nodded, but as I reached for the door, her voice stopped me. "Wait." I turned. Her eyes were softer now, the steel gone. "Whatever this is," she began, her words trailing off, "don't let it ruin you." I held her gaze for a heartbeat that felt too long. "Then don't let it ruin you either." She didn't respond, just looked down, fingers tracing invisible lines across her desk, lines we were both pretending not to cross. The air between us had shifted after that conversation in her office. It wasn't the same cautious tension anymore. It was heavier, deeper, and laced with something dangerously familiar. Longing. Every stolen glance, every subtle pause between sentences carried a weight neither of us dared to name. She avoided me when others were around, but when the building quieted and the hum of the fluorescent lights softened into a low buzz, that distance disappeared. It started small. A knock on her door after hours. An excuse about unfinished reports or last-minute revisions. The kind of moments that looked harmless on the surface but burned underneath. She'd stand behind her desk, arms crossed, pretending to be irritated. "You really can't manage your time, can you?" she'd say, that faint smile betraying her tone. "Maybe I just like the company," I'd answer, watching the way her breath caught before she turned away. She always found something to correct in my work, anything to justify why I was there. But as the hours stretched and the city lights bled into her office windows, her posture softened. The silence between us became more telling than words. That night, the rain returned, soft at first, then relentless, drumming against the glass. We were the only two left in the building. She stood by the window, arms folded, eyes lost in the storm. I could see her reflection, strong, controlled, but trembling ever so slightly. "You should head home before it gets worse," she said quietly, not looking at me. "Maybe I don't want to," I replied. She turned then, slowly, her eyes tired but alive. "You don't make this easy." I wasn't trying to. Her breath came out uneven. She looked down at the floor, as if searching for the right words. "I told myself that night meant nothing," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "That it was a mistake I could forget." "And did you?" I asked. Her silence was answer enough. She crossed the room, stopping just inches from me. The scent of her perfume, clean, warm, intoxicating, filled the air. "You have no idea what this could cost me," she said. I met her gaze, unflinching. "Then why are you still here?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. The truth hung between us, fragile and bright. She closed her eyes, exhaling deeply, like someone who'd been holding her breath for too long. When she opened them again, there was no more hiding. "Because when you're near, everything I built starts to feel small," she admitted. "And that terrifies me." I took a step closer. "Then maybe it's not about losing control," I said softly. "Maybe it's about finally letting go." Her eyes shimmered with something raw, something she'd buried for years under layers of rules and reputation. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I've spent my whole life making sure no one could touch me like this." "Then let me be the first," I said. For a long moment, she didn't move. The rain outside softened, and all that remained was the quiet sound of our breathing, sinking in the dark. Then, finally, she closed the space between us, slowly, deliberately, like surrender disguised as defiance. When it happened, it wasn't desperate or rushed. It was inevitable, years of restraint breaking quietly in the corner of an empty office. After, she rested her forehead against mine, eyes still closed. "This stays between us," she murmured, the same line that once meant distance now sounding like a promise. But I couldn't help the faint smile that curved my lips as I whispered back, "Where else could it go?" And in that fragile, stolen moment, we both knew, whatever line we had crossed, there was no going back. Morning came with a quiet heaviness. The sun streamed through the blinds of her office, striping the floor with light and shadow, like lines we had drawn, then crossed, and now couldn't erase. She sat behind her desk, trying to look composed, but her eyes betrayed her. They flicked to me every few seconds, uncertain, searching for something to ground her. Everything between us was different now. The easy professionalism, the careful distance, it was gone. In its place was something far more fragile: truth. The kind of truth that didn't need words to exist, but couldn't survive silence for long either. "We can't keep doing this," she said finally, voice low but steady. "I didn't plan on doing anything," I replied, standing by the door. "But I can't pretend it didn't mean something." She sighed, closing her eyes briefly. "You think I don't feel it? Every time you walk in, I have to remind myself who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to protect." Her words hit hard, but not because they were cruel, because they were honest. She wasn't running from me. She was running from the part of herself that wanted me. "I'm not asking you to give anything up," I said softly. "I just don't want to be your secret." Her eyes widened slightly, as if I'd touched a wound she thought I couldn't see. "You don't understand. It's not about shame," she said, her voice trembling now. "It's about survival. My career, my name, everything I built could crumble over this." I stepped closer, the air thick between us. "And what if it's worth it?" She stood then, slowly, as if every movement was a decision. "You think love makes everything better," she said, eyes glistening. "But sometimes it just exposes how much you have to lose." There was the truth neither of us wanted to say out loud. We weren't fighting each other. We were fighting time, rules, fear, and the world outside that wouldn't understand. She turned away, pacing to the window. The city was alive beyond the glass. Traffic, voices, the ordinary rhythm of people who didn't know what it meant to live in silence. "You deserve someone who can meet you in the open," she said, "not someone who hides you behind closed doors." I wanted to argue, to tell her that none of it mattered, but I saw the pain in her eyes. The kind that comes from years of being strong, of always doing what's expected. So instead, I whispered, "You taught me how to stay calm in a storm. Don't push me away just because this one started inside us." Her eyes met mine again, filled with everything she couldn't say. Then she crossed the room and stopped inches from me. "If we keep this up," she said, her voice barely a breath, "I'll regret it." I smiled faintly. "Not half as much as you'll miss it." For a moment, her composure cracked. Her lips parted like she wanted to reply, but then she just shook her head, that soft, wistful smile curving her mouth. "You always know what to say," she whispered. I reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Only when I mean it." Her hand lingered on my wrist, neither of us pulling away. Then, with a quiet exhale, she stepped back. "Go," she said softly, before I changed my mind. As I left the office, the air behind me still held her scent. Warm, faintly floral, unmistakably hers. The door closed gently between us, but in that silence, I knew, even if she tried to forget, some part of her never would. And neither would I.